Hey everybody, good morning and welcome to our very first Pagico workshop. Today we're going to talk about efficient techniques to manage your schedule, your tasks, your projects. And my name is Trey Meng. I'm developer and co-founder of Note 17, and I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. Since this is the first time we're doing this, could you let me know if you can see me and hear me okay? If you can type in the chat and let me know, that'd be great. Otherwise, we'll get started. So hope you guys are doing okay. Let's dive right in. Today we are going to talk about a relatively typical project cycle. And through the process, I'm going to show you how to leverage the latest features of Pagico, and hopefully we can efficiently sort of accelerate your workflow. Okay, so with that, let's dive right in. My time plan for today is that we're going to spend about 40 minutes, and that'll be me talking about various features and parts of Pagico, and then we'll leave about 15 or 20 minutes for you to ask questions, and so we can cover those things. So with that, let's dive right in. What we're looking at here is a Pagico 10, one of the latest builds. This is my timeline, and I'm sure you have similar timelines just like what I have here. A little quick tour of the UI before we dive right in. First of all, there's the pin items, and this is definitely my favorite area. Oh, the volume is quite low. Okay, thank you for letting me know. I'm going to speak closer to my mic. Let me know if this is better. So this area here is definitely my personal favorite because I can pin all the projects that I need to have access to right here. And so anytime I go into Pagico, I will have access to them really quickly. All right, cool. Thanks so much for the confirmation. But today, let me go through a relatively typical project cycle to show you how to use the latest feature in Pagico to accelerate your workflow. Okay, so let's say, hypothetically speaking, that I have a new website project. Okay, so anytime I get a new gig like that, I would create a new project like this, and I would enter the title. In this case, it'll be a website project, right? So I would go ahead and click Create Project. Once we're here, we're looking at a brand new blank project. So typically in a website project, we'll have to do a lot of things, right? For instance, we are looking for some key stages. Typically in a project like this, we would have some kind of kickoff meeting, right? And this is basically for need finding, right? So what do we need to do? What do we need to design for, right? What kind of problems do we need to fix? And let's say we're scheduling the meeting for tomorrow, right, with the client. So what do we talk about during the kickoff meeting, right? So I would need to cover goals and needs, right? So in addition to that, maybe special notes, any special consideration that I need to worry about during the redesign process, and of course, contract, right? So I need to sign a contract with the client. As you'll notice, I'm writing a list over here, and one of the latest features in Pagico is that you can just hit enter and write a new list item right here, and it's going to preserve your indentation level automatically. But if I want to outdent it, I would use the keyboard shortcut Command and left square bracket to go back out, and that way I don't even need to touch my mouse, right? So let's say after the kickoff meeting, I need to do some design research, right? And this design research would be, covering multiple days. So I would start from probably next Monday and all the way to perhaps Wednesday, right? So I can just type in the dates and the Pagico will recognize that automatically. And this is known as natural language processing. And I highly recommend you to play with this and get used to how to set dates and times really quickly. So I set a date range for my design research, and what do I need to do there? Okay, well, first of all, I probably need to do some kind of user personas, right? I need to define who my targeted users are and what the scenarios are, maybe, and validation, right? So after I design the things, I need to make sure that all the designs I came up with would be sufficiently good for the client, right? And with that, I'm going to outdent one more time, and the next stage is probably just the design itself, right? Which would probably take, let's say, a date range. Let's go ahead and pick a date. So let's say, well, I'm going to start on Thursday and then end on the following Wednesday, right? So I can handpick a date range as well. So if you prefer a date picker, it's also available, and you can select one date or a date range. Then followed by the development, right? So I'm going to save you some details, but the ideal is that, development is going to be here, and development will involve local development and perhaps remote testing, things like that, right? And then finally, I would go back and do the deploy stage, right? Where I upload all the files, final tests, and finally do the version switch so that we're going live with the new web design, hopefully. And so that is a sort of a mock-up of a typical key stages process of my web design process, right? One of the things I want to bring to your attention is that in a recent release, we introduced the feature to turn a list into a pipeline. In case you haven't tried that before, you're going to click on that little triangle icon right there to fold the list. Once you fold the list, Pagico will render everything into a pipeline fashion where you can clearly see where you are in the entire pipeline, and you can visualize your journey basically throughout the entire project. What's kind of cool here is that all the things, you can just mark them right here. Or let's say, we have done the kickoff meeting. We have identified the goals and special nodes, and contract and design we have started, and personas is already done, right? So once we're here, you can fold it, and then you can see a little progress bar indicating where you are within that stage, right? And so it's very recommended to have a top level sort of a highlight view of where you are in a typical project, especially if the project lasts multiple days, right? And anytime you want to dive deep into a specific stage, you can just click on the stage right here, and you will get a list of all the things within that stage. So now that is our key stages. And normally I would keep this folded list near the top of my project. So anytime I'm going into the project, I will be able to see it right off the bat. And now let's talk about some other actions, right? So to add some new actions, I would click on this one here, and I will say, hey, actions, I want to add a new list under the key stages. And typically for a web project, I would do get domain name and hosting options, right? So I'll probably do that, within a few days. Today is the 26th. I would say November 1st, right? So I'll probably do that by November 1st, and that gives me enough, time to do it. And then I would also need to get SSL, which is the certificate, right? And I will probably need to get SSL by November 1st as well, right? So as you notice, I actually typed a little @ symbol before the SSL. And by doing that, we're writing tags inline, right? And one of the other things that's really cool is that, let's say once you purchase SSL, right, you have to reactivate it every year. And so you would say, okay, reactivate SSL on November 1st every year. So you can actually type in the terms right here. And as you can see, Pagico will recognize the repeat interval and frequency automatically. And so once you do this, it'll create a automatically recurring task for you. Okay, so there's that. And now let's say we're just done. What else do I need in my project here? Oh, I think I know what I need. I need a contract. So I'll drag in a contract right here, drop into Pagico, and there we go. We have our contract. And the other thing that we need here is going to be a folder. I would create a folder and give it a name called design sketches, right? Things like that. So all the future design sketches, I will drop them right here. And so anytime I'm meeting with the client, I would just pull up this one project, and I would have everything that I need to show them the work or make adjustments. Pat has a question here. What is the upper limit for list items to show up as a new condensed horizontal tab list? And the answer to that, that's a great question, by the way. The answer to that is 9 items. 9 is the most you can get. Anything more than that, we'll think that, okay, you're really writing a checklist kind of thing, and it wouldn't make sense to render them in a pipeline view. And to clarify, we're talking about 9 top-level items, right? So if you look at what we have over here, we're having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 top-level items. You can have as many sub-items as you need. As long as there's less than 5 or less than 9 top-level items, you will see them rendered in this horizontal format. Okay. Right. So now let's say I'm pretty happy with the content of my web design project right now. And let's see what else we need to do. Right. We need to make sure that this project stands out among my many other projects. Right. So first of all, I would select a category. Right. So this is a typical project that we do at Note 17. So I would select this category right here, which is also a team category. So here's a little tip here. If you're working for yourself, then you'll be choosing one of your personal categories. You wouldn't see this team-wide category. But if you're working with teams, you would see this team-wide categories listed separately. And so if you want to categorize something that your teammates can also see, make sure you're using a team-wide category. Otherwise, only you can see the colors. All right, so I'm selecting this category over here, and I can choose to set an image if I want. I'm going to skip that right now. But if you haven't tried that yet, definitely try it. It's going to give a really good visual pop to your project. And then, of course, I want to make sure I tag my project correctly, right? So this would be, normally when I'm tagging, I would tag with two parts. First of all, I would tag it with some kind of date phrase. And that way I can search for, okay, all the web projects in Q3 of 2022. Or no, wait, I want to review all of my projects back in Q1 of 2021. So as long as you're tagging them with a date phrase, you can do this kind of reverse lookup, right? And then I would tag this as web design, right? So because that's a web design job, I would, be happy right now. So I would hit enter to close that out by setting the two tags. Phil has a question. I'm in the UK, and do I need to use the US annotation to add dates in natural language? Phil, no, you don't. That's a great question. The natural language processing, uses your preferred date format to parse your date. So if you prefer to have the date, month, year format, and if you set that in the preference, Pagico will recognize that particular date format, right? So now we have the tags. Okay, there's one more new feature I want to introduce you to. That is the metadata panel. The metadata panel allows you to give this project as many key to value pairs as you need, right? So in this case, I would say, well, what kind of job is this, right? This is a website job, right? Or a web design job for someone else, right? So I would hit type, colon, and then followed by a value of some kind, right? So this is going to be a web design job. I'm going to hit enter here. And you can use that to manage a lot of metadata properties of your project, right? For instance, if you don't need to store, well, let's say if you want to store an address for this project, right? You can say address colon, then the address. If you want to say, okay, is the project funded? Is the, what kind of, status is it? Is it a prospect? Is it a lead? Is it already in progress? Is it a client already, right? So you can do those kind of things, and you can write any kind of property that your work needs or requires. Now, this is not the only thing that you want to do. Well, the other thing is, once you have the type, and I'm assuming you would have a lot of different things following a few different types, right? So I would recommend you to turn on this little auto grouping feature. And once you turn on auto grouping, you will see the type item from showing up right here in the sidebar. And what that does is that you can click on that to filter all your jobs based on the type value that you provided. So this is like a custom way of filtering your content, because we all have hundreds of projects at some point, right? And this will let you just filter down everything based on the type that you just provided. So that could save you a lot of time. Moving on, what else do we need to do? Oh, okay. So let's say we have a client, right? And we need to keep the client up to date all the time, right? And one of the ways to do that is to basically send them an email to say, hey, we have done this part and design research is done. Should we meet? There's a feature in Pagico that you can take advantage of that might save you a lot of time. And that is the share feature right here. So you can invite people to your project by simply providing, I'm going to spam Ryle right now. He's probably sleeping. So I'll add an email over here, and you can add multiple emails, of course, one email per line, and you can keep them as a subscriber, and you can keep them updated. You can say, hey, check out the web design project status, right? So you can supply a custom message so that whoever's getting your message can still see, it's coming from you and there's a certain message attached to it. And you can click invite to it. Once you do the invite, Pagico server will automatically pack up your content, make it available on the web, still keep it private, of course, and send the link to the recipient with a nice looking email saying, hey, Treyuan is inviting you to check out the status of this project title, and also your personal message. And anytime you say, well, I'm making some substantial changes, right? And you want to push out an update to everybody who is subscribing to your project, you can just say notify subscribers. And once you do that, you can provide a new message and you can say, hey, check out something new, or we've just done this other part, right? And you can also manage subscriber. You can remove people from your list, and so that you can, adjust that as you need. So that's another feature that's really helpful. All right, so now let's talk about some other sort of time-saving techniques, right? Let's say you do web design for a living, and you will be going through this process many times throughout the year. And so one of the ways to save time here is to turn this kind of otherwise routine job into a template so that you can create new clones with just a few clicks, right? Before doing the template, I want to add one more thing. That is, we need a placeholder for design notes, right? So design notes. So theoretically, all the meeting notes or design special notes would be put over here, and we'll just use that as a little placeholder. So now let's say we're happy about this template over here. Let's turn that into a template so we can repeat this routine relatively easily. To do that, you are make sure that you have set up everything correctly, including the dates, which are really important actually, because anytime you're spawning a new clone of a template, Pagico will automatically auto shift your dates for you. And so you don't have to hand type them again and again. So let's say we're happy with what we have right now. Let's go ahead and click on the sandwich icon over here, and we can choose to do save as a template. When you do that, you can give it a name to the template, right? So I would say this is a web design project template, right? You don't even need to supply the template word because it'll be separately listed anyway. Any linked project, do you want to keep copy as references or targets or duplicate targets? The difference here is that let's say if your project right now links to some kind of reusable content like your company policy or some other things, then you can copy as reference. And that way, anytime you're cloning your project, it's not going to duplicate the linked targets, right? It's just going to reference to the same thing. If you say, well, I have sub-projects created, right? And in that case, you definitely want to duplicate your targets. And so that every time you clone your template, its sub-project will be duplicated as well. And it wouldn't make changes to the other things. Hi, Ben. Yes, you can definitely rewatch it later, and everything is archived. So definitely come back when you get a chance. Thank you. So for now, it doesn't matter because we don't have sub-project. So I'm going to say create template. And when you click on that, it'll take a second. And now you would have a template. So let's say we just have a new web project. Okay, our business is booming. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the down arrow icon right there and choose new with the templates. I'm going to say web design project template. You see, I already have one, and that's because I've been practicing this over the past few days, and that's the one that I created, in the past. So this is the new template we just created. I'm going to click on this one to say, hey, I need a new project using that template. And let's say this is a XYZ company website. Okay. So make sure that you're using the template correctly, and then you get to set a date. Let's say, well, we're now 30 days into the future. I got this new gig, and that would be November 30th, right? So let's say I got this job on November 30th, or let's say if you're scheduling a project ahead of time that you want this thing to start on November 30th, you can do that, and then you can go ahead and do the create project. The importance of this here is that Pagico will auto shift all your existing timestamps in the templates based on the project start date, so you don't have to reschedule everything. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the project. And we would have this XYZ company website, and we would have all of the dates already set up. As you can see, November 30th would be the kickoff meeting, and then followed by everything that we previously set, but auto shifted so that you don't have to re-enter the same information. The empty folder for design sketches are there, and the contract is also in place. Your placeholder for design nodes are there, and so you can pre-program a lot of things that you need to repeat, save them as a template, and reuse them whenever you want. Right, so let's move on. Yes, Matt, I saw your question. We'll definitely get there. So that's our template. And finally, last thing I want to talk about is modifying your template. Let's say you have spun a project and you realize, oh gosh, I wish I could have added a few more things to the template. You can always come back and edit your templates. To do that, you can go to the preferences section right here and go to the database specific, and you can look at all of your templates right here. See, that's the template we just created. So you can go ahead and click on the view and edit. And once you're there, Pagico will warn you that, hey, you're working on a template. And that means everything that you put over here, they're not going to be visible on your timeline, right? And so you're just modifying the template. And you can say, oh, maybe I want to change things around. Maybe I want to add a few things over here or modify the files. Do whatever you need. And then the next time around when you're using the template again, all of the changes will be applied to your newly duplicated projects. Right, so Steve has a question. How are public holidays handled in your timeline and calendar? Unfortunately, for now, Pagico doesn't know anything about public holidays, and you cannot mark them out. However, we are working on a tighter calendar integration where you can embed your Google Calendar or your custom iCal so that we can probably visualize that in certain ways. Right now, if you have a calendar in iCal format, you can go to it. Let's go to any project, right? So what you can do is you can create a new project called Holidays, and then in the sandwich icon and choose Import Calendar. And by selecting calendar feed, which contains all of your public holidays or some other kind of special dates, right? It'll import everything to this project as tasks. Sometimes it can be recurring depending on the calendar itself. And by doing that, you can visualize some of those on the timeline. But the timelines are not going to be differently colorized based on the holiday status. And so you would see them as little taskbars showing up. Matt, to answer your question about the template, if you modify a template, it does not modify prior instances, right? So all the modifications you make to a template will only affect new projects going forward, right? Which is actually kind of good because you don't have to worry about, oh, am I going to destroy something that I had in the past? None of that would happen because anything you change is only going to be done to the template itself, and they will only take effect after that point. Oh, the other thing about templates is that if you go to the preferences and go to database specific and look at the templates, right? So let's say certain templates are for your own use only, and some of the templates are for your team as well, right? Some of us work with a team. And so in that case, you can actually share your template in a certain team. And so once you do that, all the teammates in that team will have access to the template, and they can all use that to spawn new projects. All right, so now we have talked about a typical project and the use of templates to create new projects. And now let's talk about something else. It's really easy to have hundreds of projects, right? And one of the biggest challenge in schedule management and project management is not knowing what's due or not knowing what you have planned in the past, right? Of course, there are timelines, right? So you can always switch over to the timeline and just look at what you have planned for the project. But what if you're working in a mode where, oh, today I want to get all the phone calls done, or today I want to do everything that I need to buy from the hardware store, or today I want to review all the SSL situation, because if you manage multiple web projects, you would have all kinds of SSL due at different times in the year. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, I want to review all of my SSL status, right? So to do that, I can just go ahead and click on the tag over here, and I would be able to see all the SSL related tasks. I have quite a few of those actually. So that's one way to see everything related to the tag, right? Or the other way to browse everything is to go to the all data section and scroll down to find the tag you're looking for and choose SSL, and there you go. You have all of your SSLs or anything that you're looking for, right? If you're a software developer, you'll be looking for bugs. If you are, realtor agent, you'll be looking for deals or leads or, house showings, things like that, right? And you can do a combination of search, right, of multiple tags or multiple categories. But if you need to constantly do this kind of lookup, right, and looking this up through the data section by hand, sometimes feels like a lot of work, right? So here's an easier way to do it, right? So let's say we want to review all of our SSL situation. So simply do a little search of tag SSL, right, as we can see right here, and then choose to save the search feature. Once you save the search, Pagico will create a smart collection based on the given keyword, right? And that way you will get a filtered view of everything using this tag. So let's see, tag SSL. We should be able to see a lot of content showing up. Okay, yeah. So let's go ahead and do the @SSL to make sure that we're filtering by keyword. And now we have these things showing up and there. So you have one place to see all of your projects that involves SSL, as well as their due dates, right? And so this is a really good way to summarize information and frame them in a way that benefits you the most, right? So you can actually save the search and give it a name called all SSL certs, right? So because these are SSL certificates, right? And so these are smart collection, and you can just access this from the smart collection area from the sidebar. And whenever you want to review all the SSL, go over here. You want to track all the bugs, go over there. You want to look at recent updates, go over there. So you can create a number of smart collections to help you frame your data. Consider smart collections as smart playlists in iTunes or Spotify or things like that. Yeah, thank you, Steve, for joining us. So that's one way to frame your data, right? So let's say if you want to have a big view of all the data matching certain criteria, this is the way to go. Sometimes you want to create a little company dashboard that shows you a little bit of everything, right? Here's what I mean by that. So we created a dashboard for our company. And this company dashboard would have linked projects, linked contacts to all the key clients, key personnels. And of course, sub items. In this case, these are smart lists, right? Smart lists are just like smart collections, but they're embedded inside a project. And so we can configure that to show everything SSL related. We can see all the recent Pagico updates. We can see all the recent projects belonging to a certain category. We can see all the new feature development. We can see all the UE we have planned. We can see all the bugs we're tracking, key documents, and financial docs, and folders and files. And so it'll be really helpful if you have a mid-sized business or small business, but if you're working for yourself only, and you have to keep an eye on a number of things at any given time. And so this would be a great way to create a little dashboard so that you can always catch or get up to date with a single view. Right, so we have talked about smart collections. We have talked about creating smart lists inside a project. Creating smart lists is actually really easy. So let me show you how this list is done. Right, so basically the way to create it is to click on the plus button right here and choose smart list. A smart list is really just the search functionality built in, right? Once you create a smart list, you would have a little area to let you build up your rule. In this case, I am trying to filter everything as a task or a list item. And the completed status is no, not completed. I don't want to see anything that's already completed in the past. And the tag must contain SSL. So in that case, I get a list like this. And I get to see, okay, so the next upcoming SSL related task is actually November 1st over here, December. It's sorted by modification time, and that's why it's showing this way. We can filter, or sort it like this. So yeah, the next upcoming SSL task is November 1st and followed by November 20, and then December 5th, 2023. So I always know that I'm catching up to date, or if anything is going overdue, it's turning red, I would know about that as well. So yeah, that's another very handy feature of Pagico to help you frame your data. And that concludes my project management, task management sort of introduction phase. And now let's talk about some smaller individual techniques to help speed up your workflow. One of the things that Matt mentioned earlier was a question about list management. So let's talk about that. Many of you guys, like me, you will be dealing a lot with lists, right? Like those, right, in Pagico. And we have sometimes dozens of lists within a project, and we have hundreds of projects, and so there are like thousands of lists every day, right? So the management of lists is critically important to your operational efficiency. And there are a few things I want to introduce you to today to sort of speed up your list editing sort of efficiency, right? So first thing I want you to know is that you can actually copy and paste a multi-line text to Pagico. So here I have a little window with a number of things, right? So these are like dummy tasks. So these are all multi-line things. I'm going to copy that. And this is similar to, let's say, the situation where you have an Excel sheet and you have a bunch of items lined up, right? You can select all the cells, copy, and that'll result in the similar things, right? So I'm copying a multi-line task over here. Let's see, each one of them is actually a list item. So I would just paste them right here in the new task prompt. And once I hit enter, every one of them will be turned into an individual list item, which is really handy, right? So especially if you, sometimes if you want to save time, you can just open up a text editor and just jot down any task that you have in mind, making a text-based list. You can just copy and paste that and turn them into an actual list in Pagico. And the other thing about speeding up the task management here is that you want to take advantage of keyboard shortcuts, right? So in a list, you can select list items and you can navigate it using the up and down keyboard item, the key. You can press and hold the shift key to multi-select. And then you can indent them together by using command and right square bracket, or outdent command left square bracket. If you're on Windows or Linux, you'll be using control and left and right square brackets. You can mark them all as completed by pressing the space bar. Or, of course, you can delete them in bulk by selecting them and hit the delete key of your keyboard. So by doing that, you'll be deleting all of them in one shot, and that's it. So those are some of the keyboard shortcuts for you to navigate, indent, outdent, mark complete, mark as incomplete, or delete, right? So there's some other things you can also speed up. One of the most common thing that we spend a lot of time on is writing new items, right? So one of the things you want to know is that when you're selecting a list like this, right? So how do you know you're selecting a list? You can see the border right now, it's glowing blue, and that means you're selecting this. And this is a deselected list, right? So if you selected a list, and by the way, you can use up and down to navigate, right? You can just hit enter to toggle or invoke the new task prompt, right? And hit enter, and it'll automatically resume and get you a new list item. And you can escape out to cancel that prompt. And when you're selecting a list, press the right keyboard key to go into the list. Yeah. And then let's say, oh, I want to insert another item under this thing here. So there are two ways to do that, right? And especially if you have a long list, a lot of cases we need to insert certain list items somewhere, right? So one way to do that is by mouse. You can click on the plus sign and can choose sub item. And by doing that, you'll be creating an automatically indented item underneath this thing. But let's say if you wish to do the keyboard way, you can make sure that you're selecting the desired item and use the keyboard shortcut Command Enter. And once you do that, Pagico will give you a new item right under the current item. Then you can, of course, indent it one step that says this is a sub item, right? control or command enter to save. So that's a really quick way to insert new items anywhere you want. Speaking of insert items, I do want to touch on this one more time. So when you click on the plus item on any one of the list items, you can insert a lot of different things. So in addition to sub item, which is really handy, by the way, and you can also insert a comment. A comment is like annotated note on a list item, right? And you can add anything to it in a chat style, basically. And so these chat messages will be rendered like this. And so it's really useful for you to take some, sort of footnotes on a certain list item, right? In addition to those, you can also attach a file directly to a list item, or you can attach a project or a contact, which gives you a inline link to something, right? For instance, if I want to link to the dashboard, I can hit enter right here, and suddenly I have a link pointing to that particular project. Matt is asking, is there a keyboard command cheat sheet for Pagico? The answer is yes. So if you're in Pagico, right, so go to the help menu on top, and there is one item that says show keyboard shortcuts. And these are some of the keyboard shortcuts that you can use to speed up your daily workflow. Right, so David is asking a question. Hey, David, morning. How do you delete a space, that space right here? So right now that space is created because we're running out of space right there and the text is too long. So it's pushing these things down a level. So that's not a problem or not something you can delete. It's basically wrapping the line around. If your window is wide enough, for instance, right, if I had both sidebars, then you wouldn't have the actual line of space. So sometimes the extra space is created because the Pagico is running out of space to render all the controls. Yeah. So we just talked about writing inline links, right? So you can add links right here, or the other way to write links really quickly is, let's say, call John Appleseed, right? So to inline link to something while you type, you just want to use the square bracket syntax, and you can just type in a name, John Appleseed. There we go. And then of course take advantage of the NLP feature, 3 p.m. and hit enter, and suddenly Pagico will create a new task with a link to the desired contact and along with the timestamp. So that is a great way. So once again, let me repeat that. You can link to any container, including projects or contexts inline by using the square bracket syntax. For instance, reach out to square bracket, Leslie, and there we go. Hit tab and hit enter. There we go. Oh, I had an extra apostrophe there. Every Friday. Okay, so Matt, I'm reading your question here. Can Pagico create repeating tasks such as 7 days after completion rather than every Friday type of repeating? Yes. Wait, let's see. Maybe. So let's say here is a test repeating task. Let's say anytime you want to write a simple repeating task, you can just say, pick up grocery, right? Every Friday. You can do that. So as you can see, Pagico is setting the timestamp to Friday every 1 week. Every 7 days. You can do that as well. Anytime you complete this task, I think the logic is that it will create the next occurrence as long as it is not in the past. So let's say you're really behind. Let's say there's something that you set to repeat and it was supposed to be due on Monday and you completed on Wednesday, right? So or on the following Tuesday. So you're 8 days late. And then once you mark that as complete, the next repeating occurrence will be automatically the next occurrence after the past Monday, if that makes sense. And so the upcoming occurrence will always be in the future. And the other thing is, let's say if you want to fine tune the repeating frequency, right? You can create the task first, whether you set up the repeating options or not, it doesn't matter. Now you can click on the repeat action here, and you can say, okay, do you want to repeat every 7 days or 7 weeks or 7 months or 7 years and repeat on a certain date? You can have additional options added to the repeat frequency. Exactly your case. Okay, well, that was totally a coincidence. Jerome asks, how many contacts can Pagico hold? Well, the answer is very, very many. Pagico underneath uses a database engine called SQLite, the same engine used by Apple for the mail client, and I believe it was used by a lot of applications for many data usage purposes. And I think the size limit for a SQLite database is like terabytes, and it'll contain billions and billions of records. So you'll be running out of hard drive space before you reach the limit of SQLite in terms of data capacity. Having said that, Pagico isn't designed as a low-level database program. For instance, if you're developer of any kind, you would know there are things like MySQL that are designed to handle billions of rows of records, right? And you can do a lot of queries really quickly, really efficiently, and that's their strength. And Pagico is designed more like a more user-friendly, a higher-level project and client management platform. So you can definitely import thousands of contacts, but finding the contacts out of the thousands of things might be difficult because it wasn't designed to be used in that kind of scenario. So the answer is technically yes, you can put as many contacts in there as possible, but the user experience wouldn't be ideal. So there's that. Can you please confirm if Pagico has end-to-end subscription or a way to host data locally? Right, so I think you mean end-to-end encryption. I can confirm that Pagico does not have end-to-end encryption. Here's why. It's because anytime you're syncing data, our server needs to look at the data and do some kind of intelligent merging. I know that it doesn't sound like it's very much needed, but for team users, this is critically needed. Imagine we're all working in a team, and then you have a list of 3 items. I add 1 item, you add another item almost at the same time. And so who's overriding whose data, right? And in many cases, data sync services like Dropbox that has end-to-end encryption, they would just use the latest data to override the older ones. But we need to merge the information correctly so that everybody's data is neatly added and stored in a way that makes sense to everybody, right? And so in order to look at your data and merge them automatically, we cannot do end-to-end encryption, right? And so that's why we went that route. And that was the easiest route for all the users. But our cloud servers are encrypted the same strength, same algorithm as the bank systems, and our servers are also as secured as them as well. And we have people routinely, audit and maintain security, and so there's that. So I would say your data is safe, or as safe as can be, right, online. But of course, nowadays there are just way too many bad guys out there. It's just frustrating to see that there are security breaches almost every day or every month. So I definitely share the concern. We have been thinking about a on-premise workspace server, but there are a lot of hoops to jump through, right? So anytime you want to sync, you pull out your phone, you expect it to work, but it's trying to connect to your home server. That's always very tricky to implement. So yeah, we've been talking about it. We've been thinking about it. We don't have a great solution right now, but once we do, we'll definitely move in on that direction. Right. So anything else? Let's see. Smart list, we covered that. We talked about list editing. We talked about inline writing tags, inline links. We talked about using dates, using keyboard only. We talked about keyboard navigation. Oh, and finally, the last thing I want to introduce you to or reintroduce you to is actually the today view. Right? A lot of you guys have seen that, have used that a long time ago. So you have seen this before. But there are a couple things I want to just reiterate here. First of all, the today view is designed to let you focus on what's due on the current day, right? So you're going to see everything listed right here that is pertaining to the current day. You can see everything in a list view, or you can see things on a calendar mode, right? As you can see, we're going live. And it's freaking out because it thinks I'm late. I'm actually not late. So yeah, whichever you prefer, you can do that. You can create a new task right here by clicking on the plus sign, and the date will be set to today automatically. And so you can just go ahead and jot down whatever you have in mind. The other thing about creating a new task is that the keyboard shortcut for bringing up the new task panel is Command and T. You can do that at any time, and that personally is my favorite keyboard shortcut. And I just Command T and write my task using NLP, and everything will be taken care of without even touching my touchpad. There is a section here called optional, and the optional are the things that, I'm thinking that I'm putting on a back burner. So I'm going to put that right here, and you can use that as well. And so these are the optional things for you to prioritize, because one of the other things we want you to do in the today view, or it was designed for, is that you can do quick task rescheduling right here, right? So let's say, while you're reviewing your task, you think that, oh, I'm overloading myself. I'm probably going to put that on my optional list. And so I'm going to try to do that as much as possible. I'm going to, go full speed completing the must-do tasks. And then let's say, well, for instance, I don't really want to do grocery, right? I'm in the same boat as Matt. So I'm going to move that to tomorrow. So I can just move that to the tomorrow list, and it'll be there. One of the things that I want to clarify here is that you can arrange your day by just dragging and dropping. Whatever your arrangement is for the next day, it will be copied and maintained and moved over to the current day as your day passes. So let's say, well, tonight, 8 o'clock, I'm just planning my next day. I'm going to say, well, I don't really want to do the phone call, or I don't want to, do that last. I want to do that first, and perhaps do that, here. So whatever I do over here on the next day, that sequence will be maintained, and they will be shown exactly as is in the today view, right? And let's say, well, okay, so these things are pretty reasonable for me today. Let's see if there's anything that it's overdue. Oh, maybe I should do that. And if I do this, I would go ahead and move that to tomorrow. I would reschedule that. So anytime you're moving tasks across the groups, you're also rescheduling it automatically. And so you don't have to re-enter the dates and times and things like that. So that's a really handy feature. Finally, you have the someday task, right? So anything that you're putting off, indefinitely, you can put them right here. And so anytime you want to browse and see, maybe it's time to do some of the postponed tasks, you can pull them right out of the someday pool and move them to today, and they will automatically carry a due date of today, right? And finally, the other thing is you can drag and drop and resize this, right? So you can, widen the view so you can see more text. And most importantly, you can also widen it to a certain point where things will be rendered in a 2-column view. So if you have really awesome big monitor, resize it in a way that you can see more. That's always a productivity booster. You have seen that already, right? You can change your background image, and my recommendation is change to anything that you like. And you can choose your own image, and you want to make your working environment as pleasant as possible. And so that, it feels great to get things done in your working environment. Right, so I'm reading a question from MB. Is there a solution for data privacy where Pagico doesn't have access to it? The answer is yes. We're really proud to say that, we want to offer something that is that satisfies or pleases everyone, right? So one of the ways to make sure that your data is not online, period, is by disabling the data sync, because Pagico stores all of your data locally on your computer, on premise. And if you don't need the data sync, if you're dealing with sensitive data, you just simply turn off the data sync option and things will remain offline. And if you want to go with the old school option, where you selectively sync with your mobile device, you can do that by disabling your personal cloud, right? So if you go to preferences, here's your personal cloud, right? You can disable your personal cloud, which syncs everything, right? And then you can go ahead and create a team where you can selectively add things to it so that, oh, I'm having access to these on my mobile device, but these other projects or contexts, I'm keeping them entirely offline. You can do that as well. So I'm reading a question from JF. Hi, thanks for these, I'm guessing, instructions or details on today view. The other subject, can we move a task from a list to another in the same project or another? Yes. Let me show you how to do that. So let's go to a project here. Let's say, I want to move this thing from this list to that list. And all you need to do is just drag that over. There we go. Oh, that's way too much indented. There we go. Going back to there. So that's how you move things across lists. If you want to move things across containers, for instance, I want to move this guy to another project. You can just do that. Let's say move that to XYZ. You can click on that. Yeah, so by the way, the Move To menu is really interesting. So the Move To allows you to move everything to the inbox, right? Or anything from your starred items list. So you can customize your starred items list so that you always get the things that you really needed most of the time. And also it'll give you a recent items list. So all the things that you recently modified, they will be showing up right here. And so you can move things to a certain place. That's how you do the Move To. You can also copy an object to those places as well. You get to see the same choices. So if you really want to move it to somewhere else, then you can choose the other thing. Oh, and that reminds me of something else that's really handy. So let's say we're in a project right now. And let's say, oh, this is actually a project with a client that I'm not having in my system right now. And that happens all the time, right? When you get a new client, and that's what happens. So let's say we want to click on the plus, and I want to link to this potential new client. And let's say this new client's name is Steve Smith. I don't have a Steve Smith in my database, right? Sorry for the mic. So what I can do is I can just go ahead and choose new contact. Once I do that, Pagico will create a new contact in the create new process and will link to it. And so at this point, you not only link to a new contact, but also it is in your database where you can document everything, and the backlink will be created for you automatically so that whenever you're reviewing your Steve Smith, you also get to see, he's involved in 3 of my projects. And here's the first one, second one, and third one. Right, David has a question. How can you import a document that you're still working on that it updates automatically? That's a great question. So there are 2 ways to do that. Let's say I have my website contract, right? So that I'm still working on. I'm going to, the first way to do that is the recommended way. That is, I am importing the file directly into Pagico. Then I'm going to double click on that and just go ahead and edit it in whatever program. In this case, it's a Word document, so Word is going to take its sweet moment to do it, right? So you just make changes. And anytime you save your changes, the changes are saved to the copy inside your Pagico database. And that means you can get rid of the copy you have on the outside. And so anytime you want to work on this contract for Steve, you will just go to the Steve contact, double click here, and do your editing. So all the changes will be saved to this copy inside your Pagico database, and that's going to be synced across your devices if data sync is enabled, that is, right? So that's option 1. Sometimes you're editing video, sometimes you're editing something that is in a Dropbox folder that you don't really want to make a copy of, right? So in that case, you would drag the file over and press and hold the Option key. And by pressing and holding the Option key and releasing it, you're creating a link. You're not importing the file into the database. You're pointing it to the outside location. So you can go ahead and right click and choose the Show in Finder, and you will see that is actually in the Finder location. So in that way, you can keep on changing the outside file, and you're just linking to it. But note that the file is not stored inside Pagico. So if you're syncing your project or contacts with your mobile device, you will not have access to this file because the file is technically not stored inside Pagico. Does that make sense? Right, so Matt, just curious, what's the hardware specs for Pagico? I'm on a 2018 MacBook Air. That should be more than sufficient. Pagico is not supposed to be very hardware hungry. However, we have recently discovered a number of performance issues, and we just recently fixed them. So maybe try to update to newer builds, and maybe that'll fix it. Maybe that'll make it better. But technically, Pagico doesn't have a really high hardware requirement. Kanban, yes. Can import document, right? So MB, that's your question. What about the Kanban, right? So if you go to the project section, you would have this new Kanban style browser. And it's really neat for you to move things around. Let's say you're going to have, in my case, we have Pagico in progress, we have Pagico completed. Let's say in progress, right? So, oh, we're done with the October update, although we're not quite done yet, but let's say we're done. You can just go ahead and drag this thing over and move it to the completed. So that is the most common use case that I've been using for this feature. You can do it based on various states of a project, and that requires you to have those categories there in the first place. You can create a new category right here, and you can name it as in progress, completed, overdue, future, canceled, right? You can have those categories, and then you can move things around these categories. Or you can say, well, if you're managing multiple people, you can actually have a category for every single one of your coworker or your contractor in that case, right? And then you can move things around these people to allocate, responsibilities. Or you can say, well, I really want to create a location-based category. You can do that as well, right? A category would be home, a category would be your office, a category would be somewhere else that you spend a lot of time in, and then you can put things into those categories. One of the things that you want to know is that these categories, if you're like me, I have a lot of categories. In many cases, I don't need to see all of them, right? So you can customize and say, well, I don't really need to see all of these. I can uncheck the things I don't need to see right now. Maybe keep just the school and that. And maybe I don't need to see the team categories in this case, or maybe just I need to see one, right? And hit done. And there we go. So I just customized my Kanban board to only show the things I want to see. And then I realized, so these things are over there. Oh, wait, did I? Let's see, uncategory. Yeah, I probably want to have that, right? So let's say I really want to fold these. You can actually click on the arrow to fold or collapse the categories that you want to see, but you want to minimize the amount of space it uses. And plus, you can say, well, I want to reorganize this so that this thing shows up over here, and you can reorder it any way you want, right? So that you can basically create your pipeline right here, and you can see, well, these are the things waiting for my attention. These are the things I'm doing right now, and these are the things I've completed, and so on and so forth. So that is a quick rundown of the category browser, and that's one of the ways to use that. And the problem here is that you're browsing all of your projects, right? And sometimes you really want to say, okay, I have a mega project with 5 sub-projects, and each of them has its own status, right? How would I do that? And the answer to that is you want to create a static collection. Do I have a static collection? Yeah. Okay, so in this case, these are my in-progress items, right? And within each of your static collection or smart collection, you also have this Kanban board. And these customizations are independent to other things. And so you can say, well, in this particular collection, I want to see just the Pagico completed, Pagico future in progress. I don't want to see anything else. So you can customize that. And this collection would effectively become your home base for a particular project, right? So I would be done, and I would move that right here. And yeah, so you can customize the Kanban board within a single collection. Bayern is asking a question, any plans to create tasks via Outlook? Not right now, but I'm taking notes about it, and so that we can review that option and see what we can do. So one of the things I want to bring to your attention is that we recently have this feature called email to task, right? So if you haven't tried that, please give that a try. Once you turn on the email to task feature, you can copy your personalized email address and forward emails to this address, and the subject line will be processed using natural language processing. And so that if the email subject says, respond to the email by Wednesday, and then you would automatically have a task that says, respond to that email by Wednesday with a timestamp automatically recognized. So maybe that's something you can consider while we think about, Outlook integration. All right. Well, you're very welcome, MB. It's great to have you here. And now we're getting close to the end of the hour. Do we have any other questions? Okay, Jeff is asking a question. How can you effectively use metadata in a project? We did briefly talk about it, but the ideal is this, right? So you want to, in a project, you can define your properties any way you like. And for the properties that you really like to or need a lot, right, you would enable auto grouping. And so that you can have these subgroups listed under the project heading, and you can filter your content based on the various value that you assign to them. I think that's really important. That'll give you a lot of freedom in terms of framing your data, so that you get to see, well, if I want to review all my projects or with clients, I would go to the type section and look at the clients and or look at other things. So that is one technique that I want to share with you. On-premise option might be released. Unfortunately, we have no estimate on or no timeline on that, because as mentioned before, it's really tricky to provide a great experience, and it would take a huge amount of time to actually do it. So we want to make sure that if we ever do it, we need to have a really good idea about how to best serve all of the users, instead of spending a lot of time and creating a half-baked, idea, right? So it's a pretty tough one to crack. We might actually consider doing end-to-end encryption before doing on-premise, because that is technically the most reliable option. We can just migrate the data merging from the server side to your client side. That way we can actually get away with end-to-end encryption. So maybe that'll happen before the on-premise. All right, so any other question? Well, you're very welcome, Matt. It's great to have you all here. So thank you all very much for your time. It's great to have all of you here. If you have additional questions, additional requests for future workshop topics, please send us an email or tweet at us at Pagico, and we'll collect all the ideas and we'll do more workshops as we go down the line. Anton, yes, the mobile application is always a little bit behind, and we just did a major catch-up a few weeks ago, and we'll periodically return to the mobile app and give it feature boosts or to bring it up to parity. So yeah, we definitely are planning to do that. All right. Well, thank you all very much. This has been great. It's so awesome to see all of you. And have a great day. And once again, send us emails about your request, and we'll collect all the ideas. We'll put on more workshops down the line. And so with that, thank you all very much. Have a great day. Sure, Lee. Great to see you, Lee. All right. Thank you all very much.